Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. Spoiler season continues on, and we just keep getting more and more surprises. Like this Boros, or should I say Lorehold Elephant, that is all about the graveyard. That is a sentence that I never thought I would say. Regardless, as I said, more and more Lorehold goodies just keep coming, and if you haven't seen my earlier episode on the Lorehold Elder Dragon, make sure you go check that out. And of course, a huge thank you to Eddie for card recommendations on that one, as well as this episode, and I'm sure future episodes as well, so you're gonna be hearing thank you, Eddie, quite a bit. And the Lorehold goodness all started off with Osgir the Reconstructor, so if you haven't seen that one, a Boros commander with card advantage, make sure you go check that one out. With all that said though, let's jump into this graveyard-loving elephant. So the commander in this quick take is Quintorius Field Historian, which is quite the name. Quintorius is a 2/4 elephant cleric that costs 3 red-white. It has Spirit you control get +1/+0, and whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So clearly this Indiana Jones inspired elephant is all about dead things. Again, yet another phrase that I never thought I would say. Regardless, I absolutely love the design of this commander. Much like Tormod, the phrasing on this commander is pretty much the best that you're gonna get. You're getting that token whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard. It can be absolutely any card. It can be a land, a creature, an instant, sorcery, does not matter. It's just that when you get a card to leave your graveyard, you're getting a token. And with this commander's Anthem effect, that token is a 4/2. Now, like Tormod, if you mass exile your graveyard, you're only getting 1 spirit. So don't do that. Instead, work to fill your graveyard and then exile cards one at a time. Over time, you can create a giant spirit army and dominate your opponents with this elephant. Again, this is just really weird, but really awesome. So let's talk about some cards that you might want to consider when building around Quintorius. First up, let's talk about some cards that can fill the yard like Wand of Vertebrae, Perpetual Time Beast, and a new one with Lorehold Excavation. Wand of Vertebrae has put the top card of your library into your graveyard. Milling yourself for 1 each turn can really build up with a deck like this. Again, each card in your graveyard is essentially a potential creature token. And if you need to, you can actually pay 2 and tap and exile Wand of Vertebrae to shuffle up to 5 target cards from your graveyard into your library. So you can get some things back, and while you're at it, also make a token. And then Perpetual Timepiece has tap, mill 2. Obviously, this is doubly as effective, and again, you can pay 2 and exile it to shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library. So again, that's just 1 spirit, but it's also just nice to have that option. It's also a good way to make sure that you don't mill yourself as well, which is possible with a deck like this. And then Lorehold Excavation is another newly spoiled card from today. It's an enchantment for red-white, and it says at the beginning of your end step, mill a card. If a land card was milled this way, you gain 1 life, otherwise it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And by paying 5, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a tap 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So it really seems like this card was made with this commander in mind. First off, this helps get you cards in your graveyard. When that does happen, you also get a benefit, whether that's a land or a non-land card. And of course, this also gives you a means to get rid of cards in your graveyard as well. Now, it does cost 5 mana to exile a creature card, but with this commander, you're going to be getting 2 spirits instead of 1. So yeah, 5 mana for 2 creatures with 8 total power, that's definitely a good deal. Now, keep in mind, another great way to get more cards in your graveyard outside of mill is with wheel effects like Heartwarming Redemption. It says discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many +1, you gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. Being able to dump your entire hand and put it into your graveyard can be huge for a deck like this. And of course, your typical looting and rummaging effects can be very effective as well. Now again, while you're filling your graveyard, you also want to have ways to exile cards from it. So this is where a card like Relic of Progenitus can come in really handy. It has tap, target player exiles a card from their graveyard. And then Scrabbling Claws does the same thing, and Phyrexian Furnace has you exile the bottom card of your graveyard. But again, for this deck's purposes, these are essentially tap, get rid of a card in your graveyard, and make a spirit creature token. So yeah, these 1 mana artifacts can be incredibly impactful on the game. We also have some other repeatable effects, but in different ways with Mimic Vat and Izzet Chemister. Mimic Vat has imprint. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card. If you do, return each other card exiled Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard. And by paying 3 and tapping it, you make a copy of that creature and it goes away at the end of the turn. So essentially, when you have a non-token creature die, you can exile with Mimic Vat. When that happens, that creature technically left your graveyard, so you make a spirit. So essentially, this is free spirit token production on top of being able to make you copies of a creature. And then Izzet Chemister has pay a red, tap and exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. And then by paying 1 in a red and tapping and sacrificing it, cast any number of cards exile with it without paying their mana cost. So as long as we've got instants and sorceries in our graveyard for a red mana, we can make a spirit. And then when we want to get a ton of value out of this, we can sacrifice this and cast all those instants and sorceries for free. But 2 of my favorite cards for this deck have got to be Soul Shepherd and Alms. Soul Shepherd has pay a white, exile a creature card from your graveyard, you gain 1 life. So as long as we've got the mana for it and the creatures in our graveyard, we can do this as many times as we want in a turn. And being able to create, say, 5 or more 4/2 spirits at one go is a very powerful thing. But an even better card and potentially the golden pig of this deck would be Alms. By paying 1, you exile the top card of your graveyard to prevent the next 1 damage to be dealt to target creature this turn. Yeah, for this deck's purposes, this is a repeatable pay 1, make a spirit on a 1 mana enchantment. So right before your turn, you essentially save up all your mana, then you just dump it all into this, you get rid of a bunch of cards in your graveyard, and you've got a ton of spirits that you can then on the next turn swing out and kill your opponents. Yet none of this sounds like your typical Boros deck, and I love it. Now, aside from these repeatable effects, you're also going to want to consider some cards like Faithless Looting, Risk Factor, and Underworld Breach. Faithless Looting is a flashback card so you can cast it from your graveyard, and when you do that, you get a spirit. Similarly, Risk Factor has Jumpstart, and again, the exact same thing, you can use it to make a spirit in that way. And then Underworld Breach gives all your things in your graveyard escape, yes, which again, makes spirits when you cast those things from your graveyard. So there are plenty of ways to get extra value on top of getting spirits. And speaking of spirits, let's talk about some ways to make even more with things like Benevolent Offering, Clarion Spirit, and Field of Souls. Benevolent Offering is going to give us 3 spirits and an opponent 3 spirits as well. The only difference is that our 3 spirits are going to be 2 1s and there's just going to be 1 1s. Again, our Commander's Pump effect applies to all of our spirits and not just the ones it makes. So Clarion Spirit can also be very helpful. It says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. And then Field of Souls can really help us out as well. It says whenever a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So this is a nice additional benefit whenever our non-token creatures die. And speaking of additional benefits, we can also run some Anthem effects like Intangible Virtue. It says creature tokens you control get +1/+1 and have Vigilance. So now the spirits that our commander makes are 5/3s with Vigilance, and yeah, that can be very deadly. And speaking of deadly, of course, Cathar's Crusade is going to be incredibly impactful in this kind of a deck. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So yeah, our elephant and his spirit buddies are going to get huge thanks to this. And we can also make them harder to block with something like Goblin War Drums. It says creatures you control have menace, so again our opponents are going to have to block with 2 creatures instead of just 1. With the amount of spirits that we can make with a deck like this can make them even deadlier and help a lot get through. Now when it comes to Quintorius going into the 99 of another deck, the first commander that came to mind was Kaikar Wind's Fury. Kaikar also makes spirits, and you can also sacrifice a spirit to add a red. So pumping your spirits and making you even more spirits whenever you flash back a spell can be a very powerful thing. And don't forget that every single one of your spirits is providing you even more mana. Another potential commander would be Cole the Forge Master. It has whenever another non-token creature you control dies, if it was enchanted or equipped, return to its owner's hand. So if we've got a creature that's equipped and it dies, it hits the graveyard, comes back to our hand, and it actually left the graveyard, so we get that spirit. And if you want to go infinite, you can easily do that in the episode that I called Turn 2 Win New Combo King. And actually, as many of you pointed out in the comments, there are plenty of ways that you can actually do that on turn 1. But now let's move on to some pricey considerations that you might want to consider, like Reforge the Soul. It makes each player discard their hand, then draw 7 cards, and it's got Miracle for 1 in a red. So yeah, a wheel effect like this can be perfect in this kind of a deck to fill your hand and your graveyard. And this one's probably too pricey to bring up because it's hundreds of dollars, but I'll still mention it, Wheel of Fortune. A very, 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 very expensive reserve list wheel. Next up, Anointed Procession, because yeah, doubling up your creature tokens is going to be a very powerful thing in this kind of a deck. And actually with this and other commanders coming out, the price of this card is going to skyrocket. And the final card that I'll bring up is Mana Echoes. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may add an amount of colorless mana equal to the number of creatures you control that share a type with it. Basically, every single time you make a spirit, you get a ton of mana based on the number of spirits that you have. This helps you cast more and more spells in a turn and do more things and get way ahead of your opponents. But now let's wrap things up and I'll give you my thoughts on this commander. Quintorius Field Historian is a fantastic commander in Boros. Again, when most people think Graveyard, they think Golgari. Giving Boros a new area to play in gives you a lot of unique things that you can do. Again, this kind of new direction allows a 10-cent card like Alms to be a superstar in this kind of a deck. So I'm really excited to see all the new possibilities for Lorehold in the new spoilers that are coming out today. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.